Kirby Lore, the closest thing Nintendo has to a religion. The only thing missing are child predator leaders.
I've made a video in the past on what the Kirby Villains bring to the table in terms of the base story that you get while playing the game. But now we're going to explore what they have to offer when you stop playing. Kirby's lore was mostly surface level until the addition of the pause screens. But now with the pause screens we can learn about global warming, animal abuse, and domestic abuse. Kirby lore has engaged many, but why Kirby? What is causing the lore of Kirby to have risen to such a high status among Nintendo fans? Long ago, in a different dimension, there lived a race of people who were beginning to struggle with overpopulation. When it seemed like things couldn't get any worse, an interdimensional being known as Fecto-Elfilis, the ultimate life form, appeared. Fecto-Elfilis is a being of unknown origin and possesses the incredible power to travel between dimensions. It would travel to various dimensions, destroying them with no known motivation.
Like Nintendo when they see a Smash tournament.
But despite the odds, this dimension's people were able to defeat and contain Fecto-Elfilis. And with it contained, they would perform experiments on it to advance their understanding of science. They were even eventually able to recreate its ability to travel between dimensions. However, while they were experimenting on it, Elfilis became split into two parts. Elfilin, your companion in Kirby and the Forgotten Land, is all of the good within Elfilis. And something you can surely compare to some type of genitalia, Fecto-Forgo is all of the bad within Elfilis. They would continue the experiments regardless, but one day, after being misgendered too many times, Elfilin escaped and was never seen by the people of the planet again. Still, with Fecto-Forgo alone, they were able to complete their research and leave their dimension, leaving Fecto-Forgo in a test tube on life support. And it would eventually go on to possess the wildlife of the world, and after causing some sexual awakenings in young children, would go on to cause the events of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. After gaining the ability to travel between dimensions, the people of this world would go on to inhabit Kirby's dimension. When they arrived there, they found another race who were skilled with magic. These two races would come to be known as the Scientific Ancients and the Magical Ancients. The Magical Ancients utilized the four major forces of the Kirby universe to accomplish their magic: Dream, Dark, Soul, and Heart.
Dream is for dreaming of more YouTube subscribers. Dark is for the shadow in the corner while I sleep. Soul is for feet. And I've never felt heart before.
Altogether, these four forces are referred to as chaos, and they all come from void. One day, the Jamba Heart appeared from a dimensional rift. The heart began to spew darkness, so four heroes, one of these being Galatonite, rose up to stop them. They pierced the Jamba Heart with four heart spears, sealing away its great power. The Magical Ancients would write a book about this event, titled The Book of Legend. This book would become akin to the Holy Bible in our world. The Scientific Ancients were naturally atheists, so they didn't take much interest in the book. Regardless, the two races would coexist in harmony, until one day Galatonite would return. Despite his heroic nature in the past, he is now going on a rampage. The Magical Ancients would fight back and eventually succeed in sealing away Galatonite. Galatonite would go on to be continuously released and re-sealed away for eons to come. And real quick, we're going to go on a quick tangent to talk about Galatonite, because this is somewhere we get to see what the dichotomy of gameplay versus the lore brings to the series.
Other than virginity.
In terms of gameplay, Galatonite just seems like an incredibly powerful warrior. But within the lore, he has been stuck in a cycle of imprisonment and release for millennia. This leads to him becoming incredibly resentful of his own existence, taking the chance to destroy anything in sight once he's released, before one day being consumed by Morphonite. Morphonite only does this because of Galatonite's pained screams for how long he's lived.
Has anyone suggested him a therapist?
This is a case where Galatonite is still a super entertaining villain on the surface. The difficulty of his fights and his design make him a super entertaining villain. But when you look deeper, you find an entire character arc about a broken hero.
You either die a hero or live long enough to get fucked by a butterfly.
And even if he's done, he's left behind a space for a future arc for Morphonite and the Butterflies. We don't know much about them yet, but they're said to be beings that bring about Judgment Day. Hopefully, we'll get to hear more about Morphonite in the future. Back to the Ancients now. The Scientific Ancients would go on to create many of the great scientific artifacts we see throughout the games, like the Clockwork Stars, the Lore Star Cutter, and the blueprints for Star Drain. And the Magical Ancients would create some of the great magical artifacts, like the Star Rod and the Master Crown. But one day, for an unknown reason, the scientific ancients began to fear the magical ancients' power, and out of nowhere, they decided to get rid of the magical ancients.
Like divorce!
So the magical ancients were banished to the edge of the galaxy. This would make them very angry, and some of the ancients would hope for revenge one day. But for some reason, all of the ancients went extinct. The scientific ancients likely went extinct on a shiver star because of some incident. Perhaps their chat GPT became too powerful. The magical ancients, however, have no known reason for going extinct.
I guess the Harry Potter boycotts must have just been really effective in the Kirby universe.
Much time would pass after the era of the ancients, and they would become legends known only to few. One day, another version of Void would form. This one formed with purely positive emotion. This version of Void would come to be known as Kirby. Kirby would go on to be happy and make friends. But at some time, Void would produce beings of purely negative emotions, 0 and 02. Both zeros are capable of producing the very powerful dark matter. Dark matter is a being whose entire goal is to consume a planet with darkness. When dark matter attacks the first time, Kirby is able to beat it back. But at some point, a piece of dark matter would be created from purely positive emotion. This piece would go on to be known as Gooey. Gooey has powers similar to Kirby, likely because they both technically come from Void. Then the second time dark matter shows up, Gooey assists Kirby in beating it back. And this time, Kirby is able to get to the source of dark matter, 0. From a purely surface level perspective, 0 and dark matter are just good foils to Kirby being negative emotions versus positive emotion. This makes plenty of sense from a casual perspective, and they're still compelling. But when you look a little deeper into the lore, you find out that our hero and villain are two sides of the same coin, giving this battle a whole new meaning without obstructing the enjoyment of casual players. So Kirby is able to successfully beat back 0 with his positive emotions and save Dreamland once again. And 0 and Dark Matter would continue to show up because of how good of a foil they are to Kirby. 02 would show up in Kirby 64, which is another 0 created by Void. This one would show the connection to Kirby even further by taking on his face for a moment. A piece of Dark Matter called Nebula would show up in Squeak Squad, and Dark Mind would show up in Amazing Mirror. An alternate dimension version of Dark Matter formed in the Mirror World. The Mirror World is a dimension that can be accessed through the Mirror Portal that's located above Dreamland. It's mostly just known for having alternate versions of Kirby characters, but instead of being bubbly and nice, they're the type to show you beheading videos in high school. Back to Dark Matter though, Kirby successfully beats back 02, successfully beats back Nebula while the player has a sexual awakening, and is able to successfully beat back Dark Mind, leaving the Mirror Dimension under Shadow Kirby's protection. However, during this time, Dark Matter is not the only villain Kirby would fight. Marx is a villain I talked about at length in the previous Kirby video, and he doesn't really have much to him in terms of lore. Most of what makes him a great villain is done on the surface level within the game. But we still have to talk about him because he brings us to an interesting part of Kirby lore with his plan. He tricks the sun and moon into fighting and tells Kirby the only way to stop them is to summon the Clockwork Star, Galactic Nova. The Clockwork Stars are these very powerful mechanisms created by the scientific ancients. They are capable of the insane power of a wish granting. These beings don't show up very often, but when they do, you know it's going to be a massive threat, which is exactly what Marx wants to be, as he steals Kirby's wish and is about to use the Clockwork Star to take over the entirety of Popstar. But Kirby, now working with the Sun and Moon, sends them down to stop it. This gives Kirby enough time to get there to destroy Galactic Nova and defeat Marx. And Kirby returns to Popstar, having learned his lesson on blind trust. Time would pass, and one day a ship would come out from a portal in the sky. This ship was known as the Lore Starcutter and was another artifact from the scientific ancients. And at the helm of this ship was Magolor. The ship would crash, and Kirby and friends would run in to assist Magolor. Magolor states that he was attacked by Landia and forced to leave his homeland, which he says is Halcandra, and needs Kirby's help. Kirby, of course, helps him out, and he repairs his ship. He gets Magolor back to Halcandra, and even takes revenge on Landia for Magolor. But it is revealed that was what he wanted from the start. At some point before this game, Magolor met up with Marx, and he told him all about Kirby. And since Marx manipulated Kirby, he realizes that he could too. He plans to use Kirby to get his hands on the Master Crown, one of the Ancients' great artifacts. Magolor is fascinated with the Ancients and talks to Kirby about them throughout the game. He wants to collect the artifacts they left behind, which is why he has the Lore Star Cutter. And not fully understanding its power, he gets the Master Crown as well. But when he places it on his head, it completely takes him over. The crown itself is actually a piece of dark matter that Landia was keeping at bay when he wore it. So with Magolor wearing it, there's nothing stopping its power from running rampant. So Kirby and friends leap into action to stop it. They catch up with Magolor and defeat him, but the crown is not going to be stopped easily. So it uses its dark matter abilities to repurpose Magolor's soul into its new vessel. But it still isn't enough to stop Kirby though, and he beats back the crown, freeing Magolor from his imprisonment. Magolor apologizes for everything he's done and decides to stop messing with powers he doesn't understand. And he instead would make a career at building amusement parks, and would go on to become an ally to Kirby. Somewhere else on Popstar, in the sky, existed the people of Floralia, a race of insectoids ruled over by Queen Sectonia. Queen Sectonia was rather vain and highly valued being beautiful. Her good friend Taranza, wanting to impress her, got her the mirror that is used to enter the mirror dimension, so she could admire herself even better. But this mirror would corrupt her and turn her fascination with beauty into an obsession, until it reached the point where nothing else mattered besides beauty. She warped her body until it took on a bee-like appearance, and then became a tyrannical ruler, deciding her subjects don't matter because they aren't beautiful.
Do you think Queen Sectonia will think that I matter?
Taranza would continue to try to support her, but he could not deny the people of Floralia were suffering around him. And when Kirby shows up to stop Sectonia, when it seems like Sectonia is about to defeat Kirby, Taranza makes a decision to support the people over the one he loved, giving Kirby the ability he needs to defeat Sectonia, and Taranza watches as she falls before his very eyes. Taranza would struggle with the reality of her demise, and is said to still be searching for his queen to this day, believing her to still be alive. Yet again, on the surface level, Queen Sectonia is a great villain with themes of how beauty isn't everything.
Well, a little bit of research, you have beautifully tragic romance.
But yet another terrible tragedy like this one would come in planet Robobot. Somewhere else in the galaxy, a man named Haltman found blueprints for a machine called Stardream, a powerful wish-granting supercomputer created by the scientific ancients. He decided he wanted to build these blueprints, so he devised a plan. He would make a company called Haltman Works Company to fund the project, and he would build and run tests on the machine to see what it was capable of. But in one of these tests, his daughter Susie was sent to another dimension. Believing his daughter to be dead, his sole goal was to fully complete Stardream so he could wish his daughter back. But as he experimented with Stardream, the helmet he used to control it would be used by Stardream to slowly take away his memories and emotion. And once they were completely gone, Stardream was able to completely control him and change the company's goal from saving his daughter to eternal prosperity for the company. Susie would one day return, but with Haltman's memories gone, he wouldn't recognize her. But he still feels a sense of familiarity and makes her his secretary. Haltman's new plan was to create the ship, the Access Ark, and it would go from planet to planet, stealing any and all natural resources, and completely mechanizing the planet in the process. One day, they reached Popstar, and despite DDD's and Meta Knight's best efforts, it began stealing the planet's resources. So Kirby has to leap into action to take them down. Kirby would eventually reach Haltman and Stardream. Haltman is about to activate Stardream to eradicate all life on Popstar, but Susie would stop him from putting on the control helmet, thinking she finally stopped Haltman. But instead, without the control helmet, her father is completely assimilated into Stardream. And with Haltman absorbed, Stardream has finally reached its maximum power. Stardream has now grown to completely hate any forms of life and plans to kill anything that lives in the galaxy. And now that it's at full power, it can combine with the Access Arc to become its true form. A clockwork star. Yet again, a clockwork star threatening the entirety of Popstar. Kirby leaps into action and defeats it using Meta Knight's halberd, killing Stardream and Susie's father Haltman right along with it. Just like Sectonia, a great story on the surface, but a heart-wrenching tragedy underneath. Up to this point, Kirby has successfully beaten back everyone who stood in his way. But can he beat himself?
You're looking a bit heavier, man. You been eating right?
At the edge of the galaxy, the magical ancients were slowly wiped out. Everyone believed that the magical ancients were extinct from this world, but one remained, known as Highness. Highness would read the Book of Legends and learn about Void, and one day even believed he was sent a vision from Void himself. He believed Void would bring him to a new and peaceful land if he freed him from the Jambahart. And after everything that happened to his clan, he would take anything. This is when the Jam Bastion religion was formed. He set out on an adventure to find Void and release him from his prison. On his travels, he would come across 3 women, one freezing to death in the blizzard, another suffocating in a fire, and another having been struck by lightning in an attempt to take her own life. He saved each of them and taught them the Jam Bastion religion and granted them magical powers, making them the 3 Mage Sisters: Francisca, Flamberge, and Zan Partizan. Highness treated these 3 like daughters, and they all loved and respected him. They would continue their journey to find the Jambahart, but as time passed, Highness would begin to slowly lose himself after everything that's happened to him. And he would slowly become obsessed with getting revenged for his clan by destroying everything with the power of Void. And when he's nearly completely lost himself, he finds it, the Jamba Heart. He begins to attempt to free Void, but he doesn't fully understand how and accidentally shatters the Jamba Heart, sending its pieces flying across the galaxy. Highness would send the 3 Mage Sisters and the other members of his religion, the Jam Believers, out to retrieve the pieces. This would lead them to eventually arrive on Popstar, where they would find that Kirby and friends have already leapt into action. While Kirby would attempt to stop them, they would still retrieve many fragments of the Jambahart and bring them back to Highness. But it's not enough to reactivate Void. Francisca and Flamberge would attempt to stop Kirby, but they would fail. Kirby would arrive to Highness, but Zan Partizan would make her last stand to stop Kirby. But she is no match for the Pink Puff. She calls out to Highness to help her, but Highness has completely lost all emotions at this point and swats her aside. He then proceeds to use the bodies of the 3 Mage Sisters to stop Kirby, no longer seeing them as people, but as mere tools to his goals. But not even Highness can stop Kirby, and after being defeated, reaches his most desperate state. He needs to complete Void, so he takes his daughters, whom he used to love, and sacrifices them to the Jambahart, before jumping in himself, and the ancient evil is finally summoned. Void Termina, the destroyer of worlds. Void Termina and Kirby begin to fight, and Void Termina shows how powerful he truly is, having many attacks from some of the most powerful characters in the Kirby series. But it's not enough to stop Kirby, and he brings down Void Termina and enters his soul to finish him off. But instead of being greeted by some kind of monstrous entity within Void, he is met by a pink sphere with little oval eyes and a tiny mouth. Kirby discovers that he and Void are not so different. As mentioned earlier, Kirby is Void made from completely positive emotion. Even though they behave completely differently, both he and Void are the same. Void could have ended up like Kirby, and Kirby could have ended up like Void. Despite all of the implications this has, Kirby defeats Void Termina, stopping him from destroying the world.
Kirby is truly amazing.
For a series that is generally seen as a simple series for kids, there is so much more to the Kirby series under the surface. And whether you look at it from the surface level or really dig in, the Kirby villain Pantheon is truly perfect.
Who is your favorite? Be sure to let me know by leaving a threatening note outside my door. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a divorce court hearing to attend. We're not bringing the Doroch porn up in front of the judge.